Welcome to Revenge by Eve. Sit back, relax, and enjoy today's story.
I was standing in my own living room watching my husband's family pack my belongings into trash bags while they told me to just sign the papers and leave quietly. But what they didn't know was that I'd already transferred every asset we owned into my name that morning. Before this story goes any further, tell me, would you have fought back immediately or done what I did? And as you listen, comment where you're listening from. I read everyone. My name is Eve Castellano, and for 7 years I believed I'd married into a family that valued me. I met Julian when I was 28, working as a paralegal at a small law firm in Phoenix. He was 32, a project manager at his family's construction company, and we met at a charity fundraiser his mother had organized. Julian was charming, attentive in a way that felt rare, as asking thoughtful questions about my work and actually listening to the answers. His family was prominent in our community. The Castellanos had built half the commercial developments in the valley over 3 generations. Julian's father, Robert, ran the company with an iron fist. His mother, Patricia, was deeply involved in local charities and social circles. Julian's older brother, Marcus, was being groomed to take over the business eventually. Our courtship was traditional, almost old-fashioned. Julian would pick me up for dates in his truck, open doors, bring flowers. He introduced me to his family after just 2 months, which felt significant, like he was serious about me. Patricia seemed to approve of me initially. You're educated, well-spoken. Julian needs someone grounded, she'd said over dinner at their sprawling house in Paradise Valley. I came from a middle-class background. My parents were both teachers, divorced when I was 15. I'd put myself through college and law school before burning out and stepping back to paralegal work. I was independent, self-sufficient, and I thought that's what the Castellanos respected about me. Julian proposed after 1.5 years, at sunset on Camelback Mountain. His whole family was waiting at the bottom with champagne when we hiked down. It felt like being welcomed into something bigger than just a marriage, a legacy, a tribe. We got married in a beautiful ceremony at their country club. 300 guests, most of whom were the Castellanos' business associates and friends. My side of the church was noticeably smaller, but I told myself it didn't matter. I was marrying Julian, not his guest list. The wedding was expensive, paid for entirely by Robert and Patricia, who insisted on controlling every detail. We have a reputation to maintain, Patricia explained when I suggested a smaller, more intimate ceremony. After the wedding, we moved into a house the family owned, a beautiful 4-bedroom in Scottsdale that Robert offered to us at a family rate, for rent. Julian assured me we'd eventually buy our own place, but his income from the family business and my paralegal salary made it hard to save with the rent we were paying, even at the discounted rate. I kept working at the law firm. Julian worked long hours at Castellano Construction, often 6 days a week. With Sunday dinners at Robert and Patricia's house were mandatory. The whole family gathered every week without fail. Those dinners were pleasant at first. Patricia would cook elaborate meals, Robert would hold court at the head of the table, and everyone would share updates about their week. I felt included, valued even. Julian was affectionate and attentive those first few years. He'd bring me coffee in bed on his days off, plan weekend getaways to Sedona or Rocky Point. We talked about having kids eventually, buying our own house, building a life. I trusted him completely, trusted his family, believed I'd found a place where I belonged. I see now how naive that was, how I mistook control for care, obligation for love. The first warning signs appeared about 3 years into our marriage, subtle enough that I second-guessed myself constantly. Patricia started making comments about my appearance. Small things framed as concern or advice. That dress is a bit snug, isn't it? You might want to size up. Have you thought about doing something different with your hair? Julian's ex-girlfriend always looked so polished. The mention of Julian's ex, a woman named Sophia who came from another prominent Phoenix family, became more frequent. How sophisticated she was. How involved she'd been in charity work. how well she'd fit into their social circle. I tried to brush it off. Patricia was particular, that was all. She had high standards. But then Julian started echoing similar sentiments. My mum mentioned you seemed tired at dinner. Are you taking care of yourself? You know my family's friends notice things. Maybe put a bit more effort in when we go to events. I started second-guessing everything. My clothes, my hair, my conversation skills at family functions. I'd stand in front of the mirror before Sunday dinners, changing outfits 3 times, trying to find something that would meet unspoken standards. Around this time, discussions about children started becoming more pointed. When are you going to give us grandchildren? Patricia would ask at every family gathering. You're not getting any younger, Eve. We're not ready yet, I'd respond. Not ready. You've been married 3 years. What are you waiting for? Julian would stay silent during these exchanges, never defending me, never telling his mother it was our decision. Privately, when I'd bring it up, he'd say, she means well. Or she just wants grandbabies. But we haven't even discussed if we're ready. We've been married 3 years, Eve. How much more ready do we need to be? The pressure was constant, from his mother, from his father, from casual comments at family events. Still no baby news? People would ask, as if my reproductive choices were community property. I also started noticing that my career was being subtly discouraged. When I got a small promotion at the law firm, Patricia's response was, "That's nice, dear, though I hope it won't interfere with family obligations." What obligations? Well, Sunday dinners, family events. Julian needs a wife who's available, not someone married to her career. I worked 40 hours a week as a paralegal, hardly a consuming career. But the implication was clear. My job was less important than being available for family functions. Julian began suggesting I should consider part-time work. We could use the flexibility, and with kids coming eventually, it makes sense to scale back now. We can't afford for me to go part-time. Not with this rent. My parents would help if we needed it. But I didn't want to be more financially dependent on his parents. Some instinct warned me against it. I started feeling increasingly isolated. My old friends had drifted away, partially because I was always busy with Castellano family obligations, partially because I'd stopped reaching out. Julian's family had become my entire social world, and that world was starting to feel suffocating. The situation escalated dramatically over the next year and a half. Patricia became openly critical of me at family gatherings. She'd make comments loud enough for others to hear. "Eve, you look exhausted. Are you feeling all right? You really should take better care of yourself. That casserole you brought is interesting. Not how I would have made it, but I'm sure it's fine." The constant low-level criticism wore me down. I started dreading Sunday dinners, started getting anxiety on Saturday nights, anticipating them. Julian's response when I complained was always the same. "That's just how she is, don't take it personally." But it felt deeply personal. Robert started involving himself more in our lives too. He had opinions about our finances, our home, our future plans. Since we lived in a house he owned and Julian worked for the family business, he seemed to feel entitled to input on everything. "You two should be saving more," he'd say. "Cut back on unnecessary expenses." Yet when I'd suggest we move to a cheaper place we could actually afford to buy, the response was dismissive. "This house is perfect for you. Why would you leave? It's a family property." I began to realize that living in their house, Julian working for their business, attending mandatory family dinners, it was all control. They owned our lives in ways I'd been too trusting to recognize. The pressure about children intensified to an unbearable degree. Patricia started making doctor's appointments for me, fertility consultations I hadn't asked for, and expecting me to go. "I made you an appointment with Dr. Chen. She's excellent. You're seeing her Thursday at 2. "I'm not going to a fertility doctor." "We don't even know if there's a problem." "You've been married 4 years, Eve. There's clearly a problem." When I refused to go, Patricia was outraged. She called Julian at work and he came home angry with me. "Why can't you just go to the appointment? It would make her happy." "It's my body. I'm not going to a doctor just to appease your mother." Everything is a fight with you lately. You're being selfish. Selfish. For wanting autonomy over my own medical decisions. Around this time, I discovered something that shook me to my core. I was organizing paperwork and found documents related to the house we lived in. The family rate rent we were paying wasn't discounted at all. We were paying market rate, possibly more. Robert was profiting off us while pretending to do us a favor. When I showed Julian, he was defensive. So what? It's still family property. We should be grateful. Grateful that your father is charging us full rent while telling us it's discounted? That's deceptive, Julian. You're being paranoid. My family has done so much for us. I also discovered that Julian's salary from the family business was lower than standard for his position and experience. His family was systematically underpaying him while expecting absolute loyalty. We weren't building wealth. We were subsidizing their lifestyle while being told we should be grateful. I tried talking to Julian about moving away, starting fresh somewhere else. We could go to Tucson, or even out of state. You have project management experience. You could work anywhere. His face went pale. Leave the family business? Are you insane? You're being underpaid and overworked. I'm being groomed for leadership. This is an investment in our future. What future, Julian? Marcus is clearly the chosen one. You're stuck in middle management. Don't talk about my family like that. Every conversation ended the same way, with me being painted as the problem, the ungrateful outsider who didn't understand their world. The core betrayal happened on a Saturday morning in October, when everything I'd built came crashing down. I'd been feeling unwell for a few weeks, nausea, fatigue, missed period. I took a pregnancy test and it was positive. My first feeling was panic. We'd been careful about birth control, but something had failed. I wasn't ready. We had no savings, no stability, and our marriage was strained. But I thought maybe this would change things. Maybe a baby would make Julian stand up to his family, make him prioritize us. I told Julian that evening. His response wasn't joy or excitement, it was relief. Finally, my parents will get off our backs. Not, we're going to be parents. Not, how do you feel about this? Just relief that his mother would stop pressuring him. Julian, I'm scared. We're not ready financially. We'll be fine. My parents will help. That's what I was afraid of. The next morning, Sunday, Julian insisted we tell his family immediately at dinner. I wanted to wait. Process this privately. But Julian was insistent. At dinner, he announced the pregnancy. The response was exactly what I expected. Patricia cried happy tears. Robert beamed. Marcus congratulated us. Everyone was thrilled. Except I felt numb, trapped. After dinner, Patricia pulled me aside into the study. I'm so glad you're finally pregnant, she said. Now we need to talk about your future. What do you mean? You'll quit your job, of course. Focus on being a mother. I can't afford to quit. Robert and I have discussed this. We'll buy you and Julian a bigger house. You'll move into a proper family home, and we'll cover the mortgage. Warning bells went off in my head. That's generous, but nothing. This is what's best for our grandchild. And Eve, we need to be clear about something. Her tone changed, became harder. You've struggled to fit into this family. You don't come from our world. You don't understand our standards. But now you're carrying a Castellano child. That changes your responsibilities. I don't understand. You'll do what's best for this child, which means letting us guide you. Robert has already spoken to a lawyer about setting up a trust for the baby. We'll be ensuring our grandchild has the best of everything. The way she said our grandchild made my skin crawl, like the baby was theirs, not mine. I appreciate your support, but Julian and I will make decisions about our child. Patricia's expression went cold. Will you? Because from where I stand, you and Julian can barely afford your rent. You're not exactly in a position to refuse help. The mask had slipped. The warm, generous mother-in-law was gone. In her place was someone calculating and controlling. I need to use the bathroom, I said, excusing myself. I went upstairs to the guest bathroom shaking. I sat on the closed toilet lid and tried to catch my breath. That's when I heard voices in the hallway. Patricia and Robert speaking in hushed tones. Finally pregnant. We can move forward. Are you sure she'll go along with it? That was Robert. She doesn't have a choice. Once the baby's here, we'll have leverage. And if she resists, then we'll use the trust, structure it so she can't access anything without our approval. She needs to understand her place. I stopped breathing. Julian's on board? Robert asked. Julian does what he's told. He always has. I heard footsteps walking away. I sat there in that bathroom, pregnant and terrified, realizing I'd married into a family that saw me as a vessel for their grandchild, not as a person. I went back downstairs on autopilot, found Julian. I'm not feeling well. Can we go home? In the car, I was silent. Julian was elated, talking about baby names and how excited his parents were. All that night, I lay awake while Julian slept, my hand on my stomach, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to be their broodmare, wasn't going to raise a child in a family that treated me like property. I was going to leave, but I needed a plan. That was the moment I stopped waiting for them to change. The next morning, while Julian was at work, I started researching. I needed to understand our financial situation completely. I'd been kept in the dark about so much, always told not to worry about money, that Julian's family would take care of things. I went through every document in our house, bank statements, loan papers, the lease on the house, everything. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. The house we lived in. We didn't just rent it. Julian had signed a rent-to-own agreement with his father, or one that was structured terribly in our favour. We'd been paying into it for 4 years and owned almost nothing. The terms were designed to keep us perpetually indebted. I also found that Julian had taken out loans from his parents. $30,000 over the course of our marriage, supposedly for investments and opportunities he'd never discussed with me. We were drowning in debt to his family, debt I hadn't even known existed. But I also found something useful. The house we lived in was deeded in both our names. Despite the rent-to-own structure, we were listed as co-owners. A detail Robert had probably included for tax purposes, never imagining I'd use it. I consulted with an attorney at my firm, someone who specialized in family law. I told her everything. You need to protect yourself and your child, she said. And you need to move fast. Once they realize you're planning to leave, they'll circle the wagons. I started documenting everything. The financial control, the emotional abuse, Patricia's comments, the conversation I'd overheard about the trust and leverage. I also did something I'd never done before. I opened a separate bank account just in my name and started funneling my paychecks there. I needed resources, an escape plan. But I had to be careful. The Castellanos were well connected. If they knew I was planning to leave, they'd make it impossible. So I played the perfect pregnant daughter-in-law. I smiled at Sunday dinners. I let Patricia make doctor's appointments. I pretended to consider quitting my job. And I planned. The plan came together over 3 months. I consulted with a divorce attorney, not someone local, but a lawyer in Tucson who specialized in high-asset divorces and controlling families. She helped me understand Arizona's community property laws and how to protect myself. Everything acquired during the marriage is split 50-50. But if you can prove financial abuse or that assets were hidden, you can get more. I had proof of both. I also started researching the business. Castellano Construction was technically a family business, but it was incorporated. Julian owned shares, not many but some. Those shares were marital property. I documented everything about the business I could access. Financial reports Julian brought home, conversations about contracts, everything. I was building a case, but the most important part of my plan was the house. Because we were co-owners, I had rights. And our attorney helped me understand something crucial. I could transfer my ownership interest to myself into a trust before filing for divorce. It was aggressive, possibly contentious, but it was legal. On a Tuesday morning in February, while Julian was at work and I was supposedly at a doctor's appointment, I met with a notary and transferred my 50% ownership of the house into an irrevocable trust I'd created, naming myself as beneficiary. Then I filed for divorce. Julian was served papers at work that afternoon. The payoff came faster than I'd expected. Julian came home that evening, papers in hand, face red with rage. "What the fuck is this, Eve? It's a petition for divorce. You can't just— You're pregnant. I'm leaving you, Julian, and I'm leaving your family." He was sputtering, disbelieving. "Over what?" "We can work this out. I heard your parents talking about using the baby as leverage, about controlling me through a trust. I'm not doing this." "You're insane. My parents were trying to help." "Help? They've been controlling every aspect of our lives since we got married. And you let them." Julian's shock was turning to calculated anger. "You'll never make it on your own. You need us." "I don't need anything from you." He pulled out his phone, called his father. "Dad, Eve's lost it. She filed for divorce. We need to—" I could hear Robert's voice through the phone, loud and commanding. 20 minutes later, Robert, Patricia, and Marcus showed up at our house. They didn't knock. They had keys. Of course they had keys to a house they owned. They walked in like they owned the place, because they thought they did. Robert's face was steel. "Eve, I don't know what you think you're doing, but you need to stop this nonsense immediately. This is between Julian and me. Nothing in this family is between anyone. We're a unit. And you don't get to disrupt that because you're having some emotional breakdown." Patricia's approach was different, softer, more manipulative. "Sweetheart, pregnancy hormones can make you irrational. Let's all calm down." "I'm not irrational. I'm done being controlled." "Controlled?" Robert laughed. "We've given you everything. This house, Julian's job, support. This house that you're charging us full rent for while calling it a favor? Julian's job where you underpay him? That's support?" Robert's eyes narrowed. "Careful, Eve. Or what? You'll kick us out of a house I co-own? You don't own anything." "Actually, I do. I transferred my 50% into a trust this morning. A trust you can't touch." The room went silent. Marcus was the first to speak. "She did what?" "You can't do that," Robert started. "I already did. My attorney filed the paperwork this morning." Julian looked at his father, panicked. "Can she do that?" Robert's face was turning purple. "You manipulative little—" "Careful," I said. "I'm documenting everything, including this conversation." I pulled out my phone, recording light on. Patricia tried a different approach. "Eve, think about the baby. You can't raise a child alone." "Watch me. We'll fight you," Robert said. "We'll take everything. The house, custody of that baby. You'll try. But I have documentation of every loan you forced on Julian without my knowledge, every financial manipulation, every controlling behavior. And I have evidence that you plan to use my child as leverage against me. You have nothing. I have recordings of you discussing exactly that. From Sunday dinner, when you didn't know I was listening." I was bluffing slightly. I hadn't recorded that conversation, but the look on Patricia's face told me she believed I had. Robert turned to Julian. "You're going to let her do this?" Julian looked between me and his father, trapped. I don't know what to— "She's your wife. Control her." "I can't control another human being, Robert," I said. "That's your problem. You think everyone can be controlled." "Get out of this house," Robert demanded. "No, you get out. This is my home. I'm a co-owner and I'm not leaving." "We own this property." "Correction, you own 50%. I own 50% through my trust. And I'm invoking my rights to exclusive occupancy pending the divorce settlement." My attorney had prepared me for this. I handed Robert a letter from my lawyer, outlining my legal position. He read it, his face getting darker. "You planned this. I learned from the best. You've been planning to control me since the day I got pregnant. I just beat you to it." Patricia was crying now. "How can you be so cruel? We've treated you like a daughter." "You've treated me like an incubator. There's a difference." I looked at Julian. "You need to leave. Now. All of you." "This is my house," Julian started. "And mine. And I'm staying. You can stay somewhere else pending the divorce. Robert stepped forward, trying to intimidate me with his physical presence. You'll regret this, Eve. We will destroy you. Maybe, but you'll have to do it legally now. No more quiet control, no more manipulation. I opened the front door. Get out of my house. They stood there, stunned, not used to being denied. Finally, Robert grabbed Julian's arm. Come on, we'll deal with this through attorneys. As they walked out, Patricia turned back. You'll never see that child. We'll make sure of it. We'll see what the courts say about that. I closed the door behind them and locked it. Then I sank to the floor and cried. Not from sadness, from release. The consequences played out exactly as I'd hoped. Robert and Patricia hired expensive attorneys to fight the divorce. But I had documentation of everything. The financial manipulation, the emotional abuse, the plans to control me through the baby. Julian tried to claim I'd stolen the house through the trust transfer. But my attorney demonstrated that as a co-owner, I had every right to transfer my interest, especially given the documented financial abuse. The divorce took 8 months. During that time, I continued living in the house. Julian moved back in with his parents. The settlement was better than I'd dared hope. I got the house, bought out Julian's interest at a fair market rate, using money I'd been saving secretly. I got half of Julian's shares in the family business, which I immediately sold back to Robert at market value. I got full physical custody of our daughter, who was born in June. Julian got supervised visitation, which his parents hated but couldn't fight, given their threats about taking the baby. The Castellanos tried to enforce grandparents' rights, but Arizona law requires proof of an established relationship. And since the baby was born post-separation, they had no leg to stand on. Robert's reputation in the business community took a hit when word got out about the financial abuse. Several of their contractors quietly distanced themselves. Patricia's charity work suffered when other board members learned how she'd treated me. Turns out people don't like bullies, even wealthy ones. Julian himself spiraled. Lost without his family's structure and control, he struggled. Last I heard, he'd left Phoenix entirely. Marcus eventually took over the business, but it's smaller now, less prominent. The family I'd feared could destroy me had imploded under their own arrogance because they'd underestimated me. Thought I'd beg, thought I'd be grateful for their control. Instead, I planned. 5 years later, I'm 38 and raising my daughter alone. The house I fought for is truly mine now, paid off, no debts, no strings attached. I've built a life that's small but solid. I'm still working as a paralegal, but I've been taking classes toward finishing my law degree. Slowly, on my own timeline. My daughter Sophia is bright and fierce. She knows her father exists, but doesn't ask about him much. Julian sends child support, but rarely exercises his visitation rights. She doesn't know the Castellano family at all. And I'm okay with that. I've learned to trust myself, to recognize control masquerading as care, to value my own judgment over others' expectations. The pregnancy that was supposed to trap me ended up freeing me, because it forced me to fight not just for myself, but for my child's future. I'm not wealthy, I'm not powerful, but I'm free, and that's worth everything. The Castellanos thought I'd beg. They thought I'd crumble under pressure and accept my place. They never imagined I'd plan, that I'd be smart enough, strategic enough, patient enough to beat them at their own game. That's the thing about underestimating people. It gives them the element of surprise, and I used that surprise to reclaim my life. If you were in my place, what would you have done differently? And don't forget to tell me, where are you listening from right now? This is Revenge by Eve, and your voice matters here.
Thanks for watching Revenge by Eve. We hoped you enjoyed the story. See you soon.